Hey there, lovely soul, welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever found love in the most unexpected place, right when you thought life had given up on you? Today's story is a quiet miracle about healing, trust, and a woman who learned that sometimes the heart finds home where it least expects. That afternoon, the sky wore a soft gray, casting a quiet stillness over the sleepy suburban town. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze, whispering secrets only the wind could carry. A few clouds drifted lazily across the sky, while the pale golden light of dusk bathed the rooftops of weathered homes in a soft, aging glow. Lena Carter stood at the window, one hand pressed against the cold glass. From where she stood, the distant field stretched endlessly to the horizon, where the sky cradled the earth in a gentle embrace she had never felt from people. Every loss, every silent ache, every cold evening in that old room etched itself deeper into her since that one irreversible moment, the day a car crash stole her parents forever. Since she was 15, Lena had lived with her aunt and uncle, people who never saw her as family, only obligation. She didn't expect love, all she wanted was peace, a quiet life, the freedom to choose her own path. But at 19, even that was stripped away. They decided she would marry a man she had never met, Matthew Hale, wealthy, accomplished, widowed, nearly 30 years her senior. And on the day she wore a wedding dress that didn't feel like hers, Lena believed she was walking to the end of something. But sometimes where we expect pain, God plants the seed of a miracle. That evening, the air in the old house felt unusually thick. Lena sat at the end of the dinner table, the frayed corners of the faded tablecloth brushing her fingertips. The weak yellow light above cast long shadows across the chipped wooden floor. Her aunt, Judith, set down a lukewarm cup of tea, while Uncle Richard sat rigid in his chair, fingers interlocked on the table in front of him. "We've made a decision," he said without preamble. "You'll be marrying Matthew Hale." Lena froze. Her heart thudded, then stopped altogether. The name Matthew Hale wasn't unfamiliar. She had seen him in magazines, standing beside million-dollar homes and daring architectural designs. Accomplished, notorious, but distant, cold. I've never even met him," she stammered. "You don't need to," Aunt Judith interjected, setting her cup down with a thud. "Who do you think has fed and housed you all these years? You think it was for free? No one's even asking if I consent?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with pain. Uncle Richard arched a brow, his gaze as cold and unmoving as stone. "This isn't about feelings," he said flatly. "He agreed to help clear our debt. In return, he asked for your hand in marriage. That's the deal. The wedding is in 2 weeks." Lena went still. The world blurred at the edges, her breath shortened. In that moment she realized she wasn't being married off to save a family. She was being sold to justify her existence under this roof for the past 4 years. That night she cried herself to sleep. Not just because she was being forced to marry, but because deep down, she knew no one had ever truly wanted her to stay. 2 weeks later, in a white wedding dress that didn't feel like hers, Lena walked down an aisle strewn with flowers. Each step felt like she was moving toward a locked door, behind which she left her freedom, her youth, her dreams. No one spoke of love. No one mentioned a future. Only the quiet truth whispered within her. She had been sold, and no one intended to keep her heart. That night, Matthew's mansion swallowed her whole in silence. Towering stone walls, warm golden lights, thick carpet underfoot, everything was elegant, luxurious, and utterly foreign. Lena felt like she had walked into a world that didn't belong to her. Matthew walked beside her, saying nothing, only glancing at her now and then, his gaze calm, unreadable. She didn't dare meet his eyes for long. Her mind ran wild with worst-case scenarios, whispers she'd heard about powerful men and the young brides forced into their lives. When the bedroom door opened, her chest tightened. The room was warm and softly lit, the bed draped in pristine white linens, but to Lena it looked like a velvet cage. "You can rest," Matthew said, his voice deep and steady. "I'll sleep in the room next door." Lena blinked, stunned. She nodded, barely managing a faint, "Thank you." Matthew looked at her for a long moment, not with the eyes of a man who owned her, but of someone simply observing. Then he gave a small nod and stepped out, closing the door with care. Silence wrapped around her once more, broken only by the racing beat of her heart. She stood still in that beautiful, unfamiliar room, overwhelmed by confusion, and for the first time since she had been forced into this marriage, Lena felt something different. Not trust, not hope, just the slightest sense of release. The next morning, Lena woke to soft sunlight filtering through thin white curtains. She sat up slowly, still clutching the edge of the blanket, as if afraid someone might enter and snatch away the fragile piece she'd just found. She slipped out of bed, intending to find the kitchen, but before she could leave the room, her eyes caught a small wooden tray on the chair near the door, a steaming cup of tea, a few slices of toasted bread, and a neatly folded note. "Good morning. I'll be in meetings until noon. Please have breakfast. If you need anything, speak to Mrs. Davis." Lena read the short message again and again, as if trying to uncover a hidden meaning behind the words. But there was no threat, no subtle warning, just a simple, kind message, and somehow that stirred something inside her. She picked up the teacup, warmth spreading through her fingers, then slowly into her chest, her throat, the corners of her eyes. No one had ever made her breakfast like this. No one had left her a note without conditions or criticism. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, quietly sipping the tea. Her heart didn't trust yet, but for the first time, it didn't shrink in fear either. It simply paused. The days that followed passed in a strange, gentle quiet. Matthew didn't try to talk much. He never entered Lena's space unless invited. Every morning, fresh flowers waited on the living room table. Hydrangeas, peonies, sometimes wildflowers no one had named, and always a small handwritten note. "Wishing you a peaceful morning. If you'd like a walk, the car is ready. There's no rush, just be yourself." Lena read them like she was learning a forgotten language, the language of gentleness. She remained cautious, but the fear in her eyes no longer ruled her. When she passed him in the hallway, she no longer held her breath. When they sat at the dining table, she no longer stared at her plate. His presence no longer loomed like a shadow. It had softened into something still, something kind. One morning, Lena found him standing by the library window. Sunlight touched his shoulders, casting a quiet glow around him. She stepped closer, her heart quiet but steady. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not forcing me." Matthew turned, his gaze calmed like still water. Silence stretched between them. Then, his voice low, clear, deeply sincere. "I want you to feel safe with me. That's all that matters." Lena said nothing more. But when she walked out of the library, her heart felt like it had just opened a window. Just a little, but enough for the light to come in. Lena started noticing the small things. One afternoon, she saw Matthew bent over a loose wooden chair in the reading room. No butler, no orders, just sleeves rolled up and hands working steadily. Another time, she caught him in the library, fingers trailing along book spines before he turned and asked, "Do you prefer novels or history?" She hesitated, then answered, "Novels." "Then I'll set a few aside for you," he said. No insistence, no explanation, just a quiet acknowledgement, as if her opinion truly mattered. One evening, after returning from the garden, chilled by the breeze, Lena stepped into the foyer to find a cup of tea waiting on the table, still steaming. No note, no fuss. She didn't know when it started, but the silences between them no longer pressed down on her chest. They felt peaceful, as though his presence alone was somehow enough. Matthew never touched her, never tried to win her over. But every time their eyes met, Lena felt something warm, like a quiet flame burning low. Not blazing, but steady. They were still strangers. But now they had begun to see each other. That night, the house was wrapped in silence. Only the soft whisper of wind outside the windows and the faint glow of the hallway light remained. Lena stood in front of Matthew's door for a long while. Her heart beat slow, no longer frantic, just steady, Nervous, yes, but calm. She was about to step into something she couldn't undo, but this time, it was her choice. She knocked gently once. Matthew opened the door, surprise flickering in his eyes, then softening. "Lena?" he asked quietly. She looked up, her gaze steady. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered, her voice low but steady. A single breath escaped her lips, as if she had finally exhaled a fear she had carried for years. Matthew didn't speak, he simply stepped back, holding the door open. The room smelled faintly of old wood and paper. Warm light cast over his tired face, and the endless patience that lived there. When Lena stepped inside, she didn't falter. She wasn't led, she chose. In that room, for the first time, they were no longer strangers. They touched not with urgency or desire, but as if learning how to say "I care" without a word. When she stepped closer, Matthew slowly touched her hand, as if even a breath too strong might shatter her. Every movement was deliberate, reverent, a brush of fingers along her cheek, a kiss, feather light, placed on her forehead like a vow. He undressed her like unwrapping something sacred, not to possess, but to honor. His hands moved with reverence, as if he were memorizing every silent scar she had once hidden. Under the soft lamp glow, they lay down together, hand in hand, eyes meeting longer than any kiss ever lasted. No one said "I love you," but every touch, every breath said, "I'm here, I see you, you're not alone." Matthew didn't rush. He held her close, longer than needed, like holding her could heal something neither of them had words for. His breath, deep and warm, brushed her ear as he whispered nothing at all. Just being. Lena in his arms felt for the first time that her body was not a debt to repay, but something worthy of love. In the hush of that night, between steady heartbeats, she knew. Love had begun to grow inside her, quiet and unspoken. After that night, nothing was the same. No grand declarations, no sudden shifts. Just a quiet softening. Closer. Realer. Lena began to notice things she hadn't before, or maybe hadn't been ready to see. Matthew's eyes, though composed, carried the shadow of sleepless nights. Sometimes, she'd see his hand tighten around the newspaper, his jaw clenched. When he thought no one was looking, his shoulders sagged, as if carrying an invisible weight. And it was her, the girl who once feared his gaze, who saw it first. One morning, Matthew entered the dining room looking tired. Lena said nothing. She simply poured him a cup of hot tea and placed it before him. Then her hand settled gently on his shoulder, light as breath. He looked at her. In his eyes was no businessman, no image of control, just a man, slowly learning how to let himself be soft. "I'm here," she whispered. No one smiled, no one cried. But in that moment, Matthew rested his head against her shoulder, not saying a word, only exhaling deeply. For the first time, Lena felt like she was a refuge, not out of duty, but trust. They had once healed in silence. Now they began to heal together, in quiet ways that touched far deeper than words. It was a golden afternoon. The conference room was elegant but intimate. The guests, mostly business partners and longtime friends, knew Matthew as a powerful, calculated man. Lena sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, unsure what was about to unfold. Matthew stepped up to the podium. No entourage, no paperwork in hand, just a simple black envelope. "Thank you for being here today," he began, voice steady but carrying something deeper. "This isn't about a deal. I'm not here to announce an investment." He paused, his eyes found Lena's. "I'm here for one thing only." Matthew held up the envelope. "This contains the full transfer documents. Every company, every share, every property under my name now belongs to her, not because of a contract, not because of obligation." He turned fully toward Lena, his voice dropping into something raw, unguarded. "Lena, I once took your freedom with a choice that wasn't yours. Today I give it back." Then, he said, "I trust you. I want you to have the freedom I took from you." The room fell utterly silent. Lena covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. People behind her lowered their heads, some blinking fast. No one spoke, because in that moment they understood. Real love doesn't declare itself with promises, but with the courage to let go when trust is real. That spring, they left the city. No fanfare, no farewell party, just a pickup truck, a few boxes, and a small wooden sign hung by the front gate, the Marlows. The new house sat at the edge of a quiet town. Red roof, wide porch, white windows opening out to endless grass fields. Not big, not grand, but warm and real. "I don't want to live in a place that shows off wealth," Matthew said the first time they stepped inside. "I want this to be a home, a place where we start over as ourselves." Lena touched the windowsill, looking out at the peaceful view. The curtains danced in the breeze. The air smelled of fresh wood and apple pie, like memory. The next morning, Lena took him somewhere she had never taken anyone before. A small hilltop cemetery where her parents rested. They stood before two simple headstones. Lena bowed her head, eyes misting. Matthew didn't speak, he just held her hand. "I know you didn't choose me for Lena," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "I wasn't your choice for Lena," he whispered, voice trembling. "But I promise this. With all I am, I will be the man who earns her every day. I will protect her heart like it's the only thing I was made to do." Lena turned to him, a single tear tracing her cheek. She didn't need vows. That one sentence was everything. From that day on, every meal wasn't just about eating, but sharing. Every evening on the porch wasn't just for rest, but for connection. And slowly, Lena began to understand family wasn't something you defined. It was something you felt in the quiet moments that make life whole. Morning sunlight filtered softly through pale curtains, casting golden streaks across the white blanket. Lena didn't wake to an alarm, but to the sweet sound of her little boy's laughter drifting up from the kitchen, paired with Matthew's deep, familiar voice. She lay there, still, listening, and her heart warmed with every beat. 5 years ago, she thought her life was only pain, but today, her pain had bloomed into something beautiful. That entire day was simple but not lacking. A sunny breakfast, a picnic in the yard, an afternoon walk with their child, and that evening was the most special of all. Matthew led her to the back porch, beneath glowing lights and flower pots she'd planted herself. In his hand, a delicate necklace with 5 tiny stones, one for each year they had shared. "Not for the value," he said softly, "but because every year deserves to be remembered." Lena blinked back tears. She looked at him, eyes full of quiet gratitude, full of love. And before he could say anything more, she spoke first. "I love you," she said, not in fear, not in doubt, but in full. And for the first time, she wasn't surviving love. She was living it. He pulled her gently into his arms, whispering back against her ear, "I love you too." That night, beneath the stars, with their son sleeping peacefully nearby, Lena realized something. She had, at last, what she never dared to dream, a family, a love, and a home that truly belonged to her. If this story touched something in your heart, don't forget to give it a like and share it with someone who might need a little light today. And tell me in the comments, what does home mean to you? Until next time, keep your heart open. You never know what quiet miracles are waiting.